as a freelancer, I have the flexibility to do work while I'm at school, or do work late at night, or not work that week because I'm busy.
Kassy Dillon is getting a master's in public policy at Pepperdine University and works as a freelance journalist to help support herself through school.
I live in LA, it's not cheap. And so freelancing gives me an opportunity to have income on the side and pay for graduate school and, not have to take out student loans. Now I might be forced to take out student loans because now I can't do my freelancing.
Since January, Dillon has been finding it much more difficult to make ends meet because of a new California law that limits the extent to which companies can use contract labor. California Assembly Bill 5 was designed to constrain the growth of the so-called gig economy, based on the theory that companies like Uber, Lyft, and Postmates are taking advantage of contract labor. The bill was authored by Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez, a former union leader who declined Reason's interview request. It was passed last September with strong support from organized labor.
They're politicians, they're union workers, they're people who don't get it, they're activists. And so when you're in journalism, you really have to prove yourself before you can join an outlet. It's very, very competitive. There's a lot of people doing it. They're cutting people off from opportunity. And what this is going to do is it's just going to lead to these outlets not hiring people from California.
This is a really unusual position for people in creative fields like freelance journalism to be in. By nature, most of us are liberal, progressive Democrats, and we're also pro-union for the most part. And here we are saying, this goes too far.
Randy Dotinga is a San Diego-based freelance journalist and the former president of the American Society of Journalists and Authors. Unlike Kassy Dillon, who is a conservative, Dotinga leans more to the left.
This is too pro-labor, and it neglects us as workers, as people who work independently, as people who may not need the protections of employment.
Dotinga was part of a group that lobbied Assemblywoman Gonzalez to exempt journalists from the law. Instead, she allotted them a max of 35 submissions a year per client. Was it a little arbitrary? Gonzalez told The Hollywood Reporter regarding how she came up with that number. Yeah, writing bills with numbers like that are a little bit arbitrary.
There are a lot of people that write more than 35 submissions a year per client. They might write a blog post in 20 minutes. They might write dozens of blog posts every month or every year. And a lot of publications don't have the resources to put someone like that on staff. So they're either going to be limited in what they can write, or they're just going to be let go.
Vox, which hailed the new law as a victory for workers everywhere, announced in December that it will be ending contracts with more than 200 freelancers who lived in or covered California. Those 200 freelance contracts will be replaced with 20 part-time or full-time staff positions.
We've heard from many freelance journalists who are talking about leaving the state. People have been in complete panic about this law.
The American Society of Journalists and Authors has filed a lawsuit on the grounds that the bill is unconstitutional. Whether or not the group prevails, Vina Dubal, a law professor at University of California, Hastings, says that many writers are already technically exempt.
In addition to this 35 article limit that is contained within AB 5, there is a broader carve-out in the law. So workers who make twice minimum wage and who are engaged in creative work are also exempt from wage orders. But that exemption perhaps can be made more clear.
The text of AB 5 doesn't mention this exemption, which comes from California's labor code, and how it would apply to creative professionals like journalists in the context of this new law is largely unclear and up to interpretation. Dubal concedes that media companies wary of legal challenges are unlikely to take advantage of this carve-out.
Because they are so worried about lawsuits and because they have such little money in the bank at this point, a lot of the attorneys that work for these companies are saying, well, we're just not going to take any risks.
The law doesn't apply to all contract employees. Dozens of professions are fully exempted, including many healthcare jobs, commercial fishermen, grant writers, hairstylists, fine artists, and more. So why apply the bill to any industry? In the lead up to its passage, most lip service was paid to the plight of Uber and Lyft drivers.
What drivers tell me is that they don't actually have flexibility. They have to work during a particular period of time, otherwise they're not making any money.
They claim that workers have flexibility, but when they're paying workers very little wages, you're looking at workers driving 14, 16 hours a day. There's no flexibility in that.
If you have such little bargaining power with the folks that you're consulting with or you're freelancing for, then it's exploitative. And so in this particular context, in the gig economy context, it is exploitative.
In November of 2019, a coalition of drivers protested at the home of Uber co-founder Garrett Camp.
We will put an end to this sham business model, build an Uber that works for everybody.
Because we're categorized as independent contractors, we don't have a lot of the protections that comes with having employee status. Hopefully now when the new year rolls in, we're able to see some of those protections.
But the average Californian Lyft driver is part-time, with the average contractor spending about 3 hours a week on the app. And according to a 2019 study commissioned by Lyft, the company will likely have to end its arrangements with around 250,000 drivers, and the part-timers who make up the majority would be the first to go. According to that same study, 95% of Californian drivers say that the job's flexibility is extremely or very important to them. And yet, Coral Itzcali, a spokesperson for Mobile Workers Alliance, which is trying to unionize the industry, says that workers would be better off if Uber and Lyft were forced to rely primarily on full-time workers earning higher salaries.
For us, this is about focusing on ensuring that jobs are good jobs, right? If we have 1 or 100 jobs that are paying less than minimum wage, there is absolutely no benefit. I rather have 50 good jobs than 100 bad paying jobs, and those 50 good jobs are actually giving a living wage.
According to data from Upwork, a site that pairs businesses with freelancers, and the Federal Reserve, about 20% of the American labor force freelanced on a part-time basis in 2019. If a law like this went national, many of these roughly 35 million people would need to look for other arrangements.
I hope that there's some way that the labor movement can look at freelancers of all types and say, this is a valid, honorable profession, that we are workers too. Many of us choose this field. We are not exploited, we're not scabs, we're small businesses, and we deserve to be treated that way.